Hi, my name is Earl Waggoner. I'm Dean of the School of Biblical and Theological Studies at the College of Adult and Graduate Studies for Colorado Christian University. This is Living Life with Grace and Truth. Once a month, you may tune in to what we're doing here. We like to bring you some videos, some interviews, some reflections on some things that contribute, hopefully, to your spiritual growth and maybe a little mental challenge as well. Today, I am pleased to be with Dr. John Mrazek. He is connected with his own company, Shared XP, which is a kind of a consultation company for churches and particularly focusing on their needs regarding executive pastoral ministry. And maybe even more important for our conversation today, he is our lead course developer and program developer for my school's MA in Executive Leadership and Christian Ministry. So it's been a thrill to get to know John personally and to work with him in this course and programmatic development. And we're excited about what the degree can bring for a whole lot of folks who will connect with it. So, John, first of all, welcome to our little video log, our vlog, as it will. Good to have you here with us. Thanks for taking the time to have this conversation. Here's the big question to start with. Do you need a degree to be a pastor?
Wow, I've been thinking about that since you asked me earlier, Earl, and it's one of those questions where you just want to say it depends. I think there are people who are natural born pastors. In my experience working with churches, there are people who just walk and talk and are a pastor. Whether you give them a degree or a piece of paper on the wall, doesn't matter. They are pastors. But boy, if they can clamp on or add to that degree, it really does add more to their depth and their ability to address all areas of the church. So the answer to that would be it depends. I think that on a desert island, a person could be a pastor without a degree, and they would pastor people and care for them in the way that God wants them to. But the degree only makes it a lot better and really hones those skills and those abilities.
That's a great answer, and it makes me want to press a little deeper with your own experience, given the fact that you have a PhD, you obviously are a well-educated man, and you not only consult regarding executive pastors, but you have been an executive pastor to church. Did your degrees help you do what you've done?
Wow, that's a question that'd probably take me 2 hours to cover, so I'm going to have to cover it really, really shortly. I am a pastor in my heart of hearts. I'm a pastor. People recognize that, but I express my pastoralness differently than the typical pastor. If a person is a professional, ministry professional, they've been through the seminary, they've gotten a degree, they're labeled a pastor, they're really good at this set of skills, which is people-centricness. Matthew was one of the disciples, sat at the table with Jesus. He was a business guy, but he was also a pastor. I think you can be both, and I think the mixing of those two skill sets enables you to better answer your call.
That's a good way to put it, and I think it points to kind of the niche that executive pastors occupy in terms of where they are on the ministry spectrum, if you'd like to think about it that way. And in large measure, it sounds like what you're saying is that particularly for executive pastors, one of the big ministry benefits that they bring to a church or to a church staff is a kind of a facilitator more than anything else. Would that be accurate?
Absolutely. I think you can't fully serve as a pastor caring for people if you have to worry about, well, what are the liabilities to what I'm about to do? And do I have the budget for what I'm about to do? And what are the guidelines? All that kind of stuff becomes clutter to the pastoral process. And I think the executive pastors have the unique ability to come into a setting, and whether you're a church of 10 or 10,000, I tell people, you need the skill set of an executive pastor because it's not all internal. You're having to interact with a world that can at times be hostile to the call that we have as to be pastors. So if an executive pastor can stand in that gap, they can surround the church with moats of protection, That enables the pastors within to fully express the calling that God's given them without worrying about all those other details that an external, sometimes hostile world can place on them.
Makes good sense. Makes good sense. So if we back up a little bit and talk about, just generally speaking, the need for a degree to be a pastor, regardless of what your pastoral function may be at a given church or in a ministry. So it sounds like it would be safe to say that a degree does not make you a pastor, but a pastor with a degree can be very effective in making disciples for Jesus Christ.
Oh, that's
Accurate?
excellent. That's excellent. I think that's a great synopsis of the thought. I think if you went back 20 or 30 years and said the word executive pastor, people would look at you and say, what's that? Is that a higher level normal pastor? And you would say, no, that's a business oriented pastor. Now in our modern day society, an executive pastor is a commonplace way to describe the skill set of this special pastor. I think having a degree is definitely very helpful. If that degree can be in different fields other than pastoring, that's where I'm gonna promote our executive pastor training program to say, hey, finish seminary, get through those biblical courses, absolutely, and then learn about the other side of running a church, which is what this executive pastor training program does, is it helps you understand enough of it to recognize maybe gifted people in your congregation who can plug into those roles and do them for you. I think at the end of the day, a seminary trained, master's level, doctorate level trained pastor who also has a business degree or has exposure to a business program is the best of both worlds, and it will really serve that person and the church long term.
It's a good way to make those distinctions. So regarding benefits of a degree, and again, we're kind of speaking generally here, and obviously this applies to executive pastoral training as well as biblical or theological studies pastoral training. But let me just throw out a couple of benefits that I see to gaining, put it this way, let me throw out some benefits that I think a person would receive in getting a degree, and be a little introspective here and tell me your reflection based on your experience about that particular benefit. All right, so kind of putting you on the spot here, but I'll throw these benefits out, and you tell me if that indeed was a benefit to your education in ministry. All right, so here's the first one. First benefit would be to learn how to think critically.
Wow.
Reflect on that experience that you had.
I think our people are so variable, and ministry is people-centric, and you're trying to create policy and procedure that has to do with people who are incredibly variable, and any given day are completely different than they were before. I think the ability to think critically helps organize that thought process and your reaction to the experience, and gives you a framework in which to create those policies and say, I'm going to create a policy that provides guardrails to keep people within and safe, but I'm going to allow some flexibility in that to make sure that at the end of the day, it can morph around a change in our culture here at the church or a change in our society externally. So critical thinking, I think, is an incredibly valuable skill.
Do you feel like you learned how to think critically in all of your educational journey?
I think my bachelor's, my master's, and my PhD, each represented different levels of critical thinking. At the bachelor's level, I learned what it meant. I learned the framework that it represents. Then in master's, I would learn how to apply it to real life. At a doctoral level, I'm looking for ways to improve critical thinking processes. So it's taking it to the next level. I think every step of the way, I learned a little bit more and was able to perfect that part of my skill set.
Well, that's a good way to put it, particularly at the 3 degree levels that you experienced. Okay, so here's another benefit to a degree. Expand your knowledge base.
Oh boy. As I'm writing the curriculum and programs for the XP training program, I'm continually pouring into it real life experiences and best practices. I'm really, as I interact with churches every day, I'm pouring that into the degree in the hope that I could fire hose a bunch of students with all this data, and they would grab the nuggets that make sense to them and make good notes, so that a year or 2 down the road, they're faced with a particular instance and they would say, hey, I remember that example Dr. Mrazek shared, and I'm going to apply that to my world. in this instance, and that would be really, really helpful. So absolutely, it definitely enhances your skills and your experience level.
You know, one of the things I really have appreciated about the courses that you personally have developed are the case studies that you put in there. That you know, you're putting a student into a scenario that probably reflects something real that you experienced in one way or the other, that then forces them to apply the theoretical knowledge in a real life situation. And I've really appreciated that that kind of admixture that you've inserted into those courses. So it's kind of along those same lines.
Thank you. No, one of my biggest frustrations, I took all my degrees, bachelor, master's, and PhD after I turned 32. So I was a late student. I did it all as an adult. And one of my biggest frustrations when I was working with classes would be a professor who had obviously been out of the marketplace for a long time. And they would be trying to give me examples and was like, wow, that's so dusty and stale. It makes really no sense or difference to my world. I love it when we can take a real-time experience and say, how do I apply the theory and the concepts we're learning in class directly to that real-time experience? Then I think learning happens, and I think people feel the true value of the course.
I love that. That's exactly what we're trying to do. And not just in our MA in Executive Leadership and Christian Ministry, but in all of the School of Biblical and Theological Studies degree programs. Yeah, it's official, but you know, there it is.
I love it.
But that's what we're trying to do. You know, I mean, there's got to be a solid level of practical application. You know, you apply your theory, you apply your theology, you apply your hermeneutics to real life situations, to ministry situations, whether in church or parachurch ministry or wherever you find yourself. So I appreciate, that's one of the other things I appreciate about you and your heart for making this a fully orbed educational experience.
Thank you.
So anyway, so we'll tie it up and just ask if there's anything finally that you'd like to say, John, just to put a bow on this.
Do you need a degree to be a pastor? That's where we started this conversation. And as we've kind of went on this 10-minute adventure, I would say at the end of the day, the answer is it depends, but absolutely yes, because you're going to be a much better pastor if you can understand enough business concepts to interact with maybe a board member who is a business person from the marketplace, and they're saying things like, I would like to see a cash flow statement, or can you put together a profit and loss statement, or what are your projections for next quarter? And as a pastor, your head is spinning around in circles. Like, I don't know. If you go and take business training classes or take the XP training program like we've been talking about, you're going to be exposed to that enough that you can at least say, I don't understand everything you've said, but I know where to get the information to get that, or I have this church attendee who is excellent in that area. Let me bring them into ministry and let them express their expertise in this particular area. I love that part of this education. So is it good to have a degree? I think absolutely. But don't feel like you have to wait until you have your degree to start being a pastor. You can be a pastor right now. Go and care for people in God's name, and that's what a pastor does, shepherds the flock. I could go on for hours, but I'll stop there.
Great words, John. Really, thank you very much. It's been a privilege for me to have this brief dialogue with Dr. John Mrazek, who is integrally involved in our MA in Executive Leadership and Christian Ministry degree program here at CCU. Hey, if you have any questions, I think there's a comment box below that you can insert those questions. We look forward to hearing from you. Again, this has been Living Life with Grace and Truth. I'm Earl Waggoner. Thanks so much.
Thank you.